Hey, this is Welcome to Adulting. I'm John.
I'm Shawna.
And I'm Caleb.
And normally this is the podcast where we come and discuss how we don't know what we're doing, and we talk about a topic that we know nothing about. But today, it's a topic that I'm actually somewhat familiar with and actually have some skills in this area. We're talking about cooking. I'm so excited, you guys. I love to cook, and I'm actually pretty dang good at it. So I'm excited to talk to you guys about that. First, though, before we do that, I want to hop in and talk about some adulting wins. We want to celebrate the things that we've been able to do and do well. So let's start with Shawna. How have you adulted this week?
Yes, so I guess this really isn't this week. It's been the past few weeks, but I started my final semester of school. So I'm really excited about that. It's kind of hard getting back into a study routine just because I take online classes. So it's very much independent and I have to discipline myself to complete things. So I'm working on getting a good balance yet, but I'm pretty proud of the fact that I'm in my last semester.
That's awesome. I can't imagine working and having a family and going to school. You are doing way more than I could have possibly done. I feel like my final semester I did nothing at all, and besides schoolwork, I had like a part-time job, but that really wasn't anything. So good job keeping up with all of that and finishing.
Thanks.
That's
the light at the end of the tunnel is what's keeping me alive through this process.
Are you finding these classes harder or easier than when you first started college?
I think easy. Well, when I first started college, I was actually going for nursing. And they were hard. If I had studied, I was okay. But when I switched to small business with a nonprofit focus, it just came to me so easy. So it just kind of reestablished that I'm in the right place. And I'm really thankful I switched because this is where my heart is. My heart was in taking care of people too. It's just now I get to do it a different way, and it's friendlier for my family.
Yeah, that's really awesome, Shawna. Are they classes that are just kind of like I have to finish these to get credit, or are these actually fun classes you're taking? Because my last year of college, I got to do all the fun classes. So they were all really difficult classes, but ones I enjoyed. Is it the same, or is it something a little different?
So there are a few classes I would like to take for fun that would help me in the nonprofit world that I will probably for Winterim. I graduate before that, so these are for graduation. But one of them is promotions, which is what I do. So that's super easy, and I'm liking that it's an easy A.
Nice. And you might be able to actually teach me something about promotions because I'm not.
Oh, whatever.
I could use some help with that. Caleb, how have you adulted this week?
John, you and we were talking earlier this past week about how one of my favorite football teams was in town and the potential of meeting them.
Mm-hmm.
Well, as the weekend got closer, I realized all of those things that I promised my wife I was going to do last week, I did none of them. And instead of going to see the football team that I've loved since my childhood, see them practice and meet them potentially, I stayed home and did all the projects that I promised that I would do. So there was some satisfaction knowing that there were projects that I've put off for a couple months, and I was able to get them almost 100% complete.
That's great, and I'm glad that you did that list for your wife. I think, though, if she listens back to this, she'll be like, now it looks like I'm not letting you enjoy what you want to do. You should have just gone.
You always do that angle of me
This is fully Caleb's.
Sorry.
This is fully Caleb's fault, though, for being lazy.
It is my fault, yeah.
But good job doing that. I was at the game. You didn't miss anything because your favorite team got destroyed by the Green Bay Packers, so it's all right. You didn't miss.
Destroyed is
how many
accurate?
How many turnovers did they have? How many fumbles and interceptions?
Probably too many, but let's not get into those details. Destroyed is 40 plus points.
You're right. It was only 20 points.
I would say it was more of a dominant win.
More of a decisive victory.
Yes.
That started within the first 3 minutes of the game. So.
Well, you'll catch it next time, Caleb.
Cool. Yeah. One thing I want to celebrate that I've done these past couple weeks, my brakes were making a horrible noise. Caleb, did you hear my brakes at all? I don't know if you had heard them before I got them fixed, but
you mentioned it a lot.
They were squeaking real bad. And I did the thing where I pretended like it wasn't a problem for a couple weeks until they were always making a horrible noise. And it was just like a grinding noise. So I took it in. And about $700 later, then I got my brakes fixed, which isn't fun, but I'm very glad that I did it. So I did the adulting thing of spending a lot of money to get my brakes fixed. So yeah, now, I'll actually be the one to stop my car instead of just, running into something. So
Especially in Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, we've had a lot of rain these past couple of months. And so the roads, like the day after I got them fixed, the roads were super slick. And I was very thankful that I was able to stop and avoid, I had a couple of close calls that I was able to avoid with good brakes.
Oh,
so
gosh.
There you go.
Yeah, and I mean, you don't have a short commute to work either.
No.
You're on the highway most of the time, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've got about a 40-minute commute both ways. So I'm definitely glad to be able to stop,
Yeah.
to be able to stop. 35 minutes, maybe cut down a little bit. But yeah, having brakes is very helpful.
That makes me nervous. In the winter, I would not want to drive that long.
That's like our first PSA, though. Stopping is good.
Stopping is good. That's a great
Brake.
PSA. This is worse than those old like Sonic Says that we're on, like, where we
just need that the more
Steve
you
Urkel,
know,
yeah.
like rainbow star thing.
We can do
going
that.
across.
Can you get that sound effect in here?
Absolutely.
That like do 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 do.
If it's legally allowed, absolutely.
I'm sure you
I think
can.
NBC owns it, but we'll see.
We'll put it in there. This is a good PSA. Brakes are good. Stopping is good. All right. Well, speaking of good things, we want to celebrate some of your adulting wins as well. If you want to share a way that you've adulted this last week, go onto Facebook, go onto our Instagram. I'm getting a nod from Caleb. We're welcome to Adulting Pod. You can also go to Welcome to Adulting Pod. Wow.
Welcome to adultingpod.com.
You can also come to adultingpod.com.
We also show up on Welcome to Adulting Podcast on Facebook. Either one. They're both linked together. Technology.
There's so many ways you can find us and share your adulting win. Like Alex, who shared with us that this last week he filled out his short/long-term disability insurance and he meal prepped over the weekend. So he's got all the week's worth of food taken care of. According to him, he just crushed the whole adulting concept. So good job, Alex. Way to be prepared. Way to fill out your short-term, long-term disability insurance. When I first got hired here, I took way too long to do that because I had no idea what it was. And I thought it was the same thing as like my health insurance. And since I'm already under my parents, I thought, I don't have to do this, but I guess they're different. So yeah, good
Very
job. You're
different,
way
yes.
ahead of me, Alex.
Yeah, if this is the same Alex we're talking about, I'd give him like a C+, B- adulting. I don't know about crushing adulting.
Hey, we're trying to be positive and supportive here.
Caleb,
We're trying to be a support group for people
That's
here,
right.
Caleb. So if you
Hey,
want to,
so glad that you got
still a
insurance,
pass.
but still
Yeah.
not that great.
Alex, I'd give you an A+.
It's not the insurance. The insurance is great. Great job, Alex. But I've seen what he's eating at lunch. That's like the B-, C+. So
It's kind of like that. There's a picture that goes around Facebook, and I'm meal prepping, and it's pizza, and it just slices in each day for the week.
that's not that's not prep. No.
You got it prepped, yeah. Well, if you'd like to share your adulting win and have Caleb horribly demean you and belittle you for your success, share with us on Facebook, or go on to Apple Podcast or wherever you're listening. Leave us a review, and in the review, tell us how you adulted. We'd love to share it. So we're going to take a really quick break. When we come back, we're going to be talking about cooking, how you can cook better, and how you can make it more fun and enjoyable and easy. So stay tuned. Hey guys, it's John from Welcome to Adulting. One of the biggest things we want to do with this podcast is encourage you, and if you're looking for more encouragement, I would really suggest you go to thefamily.net. There you can find all sorts of resources, you can find music, you can find plenty of articles and things to really encourage you. Check it out. You'll find a lot of encouragement there, just like you find on our show. Hey, this is Welcome to Adulting. Thanks for coming back. Like we talked about, we're going to be talking about cooking today. I want to share some stuff with you guys really quickly because I was doing some research. Turns out, apparently, millennials are spending less money on groceries than less generations. We're broke, but also the less money on groceries and we're spending less time cooking. We're cooking a lot less. Part of that has to do with the fact that a lot of people don't really know how to cook. So I'd love to hear from you guys. What are your kind of thoughts on cooking? I kind of want to hear from Caleb mostly because Shawna, I know we've talked about cooking before, but Caleb, what about you? Are you a good cook? Do you do it a lot?
Yeah, I'm a pretty decent cook. Most of the time, I like to cook big meals. I'm really bad at tiny meals, but growing up, my dad taught me how to grill right away. So I love using the grill. I love trying different meats, and now that I'm where I live, there's different kinds that I can try that you couldn't find in Chicago. It's really exciting to like try and experiment those kind of things. And breakfast is my big one during the week. I make breakfast for my wife and I every morning.
Nice. What about you, Shawna? Do you do a lot of cooking at home, or?
Well, I have to. I have so many mouths to feed. But no, and I do. I cook during the week. My husband is a great help when he's home to do it. He owns his own company, so he works many hours during the day. So usually during the week, I cook by myself at night. But yeah, weekends, we like to kind of do the family thing. We have limited meals we cook, though, because we try to eat clean. Sundays usually are like unhealthy, big family potato and meat meal.
Nice. That's awesome. I have talked to so many people who don't know how to cook. I love cooking. I can't imagine not knowing how to cook. When I was a little kid, like from a really young age, my mom had me in the kitchen helping her, bake cookies or just stir, the pot of like the dish soap water just to pretend like I was cooking, so like I would do that stuff when I was younger, but now that's one of my favorite things to do is to cook. But I've talked to a lot of people who have no idea what they're doing in the kitchen. When I was in college, I knew a guy who literally didn't know how to make ramen, like the microwave ramen, and he came up and was so confused on how to do that. So there are people who don't know what they're doing.
That's not even the best way to eat the ramen.
It's not.
No.
But he didn't even know how to microwave it. So really quickly, what doesn't count as cooking? Ramen, cereal, grilled cheese.
Macaroni and cheese.
Unless you're doing them like good. You can make all of those things really well, except cereal, really. But yeah, those things don't count as cooking. So when we're talking cooking, we're talking about using some sort of heat or fire, putting a lot of ingredients together, maybe doing some knife work, things like that. That is what cooking is. None of this microwave dinners, any of that stuff.
I was going to say frozen meals should not count.
Frozen meals
You can just
are
rip
not
it
cooking.
open and throw it in the oven. Oh.
But with that being said, no judgment if that's where you're at, because we've all been in that place where we are busy, we are tired, we are hungry. If that's where you're at, that's totally fine. But we want to encourage you to be able to kind of start cooking for yourself because, like you said, Sean, it's easier to eat clean. You can eat a lot healthier. It's a lot cheaper. And it's a really good life skill. And it's really fun to cook for other people and kind of develop that community around food.
Yeah. And just to add off of that, if that's where you're at, it's a great place to learn, actually. I didn't know how to cook fresh vegetables for the longest time. And I would just buy it pre-seasoned, frozen, and then mix them together until I learned the seasoning combinations and all that for a lot of the things that I like.
And like you said, it's a great jumping off point. Sometimes, you can make a nice, maybe do something nice with some meat and then just do the steamer pack of vegetables. That's awesome. Go for it.
Right. And I think it's a rite of passage as you're learning to cook in your adulthood. I think the first few years of marriage, we ate a lot of those frozen meals, and it's because I didn't know how to make them. I didn't understand how some of them can be so bad for you. And I was very intimidated in the kitchen with making my own like huge lasagna meals or whatever.
I think the number one tip I would give to most people is just be confident in the kitchen. Because when you know what you're doing and when you're confident, you can A, have a lot of fun, but two, like being afraid of what you're doing, especially when you're working with knives and fire and hot oil and things like that. When you're afraid and when you don't know what you're doing, you can cause a lot of issues and serious injuries can occur.
I don't know about you two, but I have to listen to like a certain artist or certain song as I'm cooking. Kind of like an athlete listens to music to
like
get pumped
pump up
up.
music, yeah.
Like I need to listen to certain songs.
I've got my like running music. I've got like a running playlist and like an exercise playlist. So I'm just imagining like what my cooking playlist would be. But I just do a lot of podcasts. But yeah, so where do you guys think is a good place to start out? Caleb, you had talked about learning how to cook vegetables and things like that. Where's a really good like starting point for people who aren't super comfortable in the kitchen, maybe don't quite know what they should be buying, stuff like that? Where's a good jumping off point?
So this is going to sound really corny, especially.
Is it corn?
No. But or maybe
Thank
not
you for
corny's
laughing.
not
Thank you
the
for laughing
word,
at that,
but,
Shauna. That was a dumb joke.
You're welcome. I like dumb
this
jokes,
this
so.
website. I don't know, John, if you even have membership here. It's free, but Pinterest. I've learned how to cook so many recipes from Pinterest. Like, they tell you the exact things to put in. And I know there's cookbooks and things like that, but like, you go on there and there's pictures of people's like results of how they cooked it. And that is how I've learned how to cook so many of the things that I like to cook.
John's shaking his head. You have to, just so you know, when you find your girl and your forever lady,
Yes.
she's going to be a Pinterest. You have to like the site because everything is going to be on there. Your house, cooking, decorations, clothing.
My wife sent me a Pinterest page of like 50 rose gold rings with like peach morganite diamond on it. And she's like, I like
Engagement.
these numbers. And that's actually, that's how I knew
Look at him.
my wife was serious about marriage, was because she sent me a Pinterest.
This is stressing me out
Page.
so much right now.
What, Pinterest?
We started talking about cooking, which is something I love, and found a way to make this stressful
No.
and anxiety-ridden.
No, Pinterest though, John, like, I'm not joking around. It is like, if you're learning how to cook for the first time, and if like, one of my favorite things in the world in Chicago is this northern Chinese dish with eggplant. And I had no idea how to make it. I'd asked them for a recipe. They didn't speak English. So I didn't know how to make it. But you just type in, northern Chinese eggplant dish on Pinterest, and there's like a million different ways to make it.
Or if you're like me and not a Pinterest person, just go on YouTube. Like, there are so many great videos on YouTube from so many celebrity chefs and people that you'll recognize who can teach you step by step how to cook. And like you said, you had that eggplant dish that you loved. Pick a dish you love, go onto YouTube or onto Pinterest, and you can figure out how to make it really easily.
And you'll
really
save
quickly.
so much money learning how to make it compared to buying it at the restaurant.
Yeah, and then you can control, maybe you don't like it as spicy or you want a little extra heat in there. You can control that a lot more, and it's really fun to be able to do that on your own as well and kind of have that feeling of accomplishment because I made this cool dish that I love. Like, the most accomplished I've felt in the kitchen is when I made homemade pasta and made like homemade tortellinis. Oh, it was so cool. It was so fun and tasted really good. I also made homemade creme brulee once. That was also fun because I got to use a blowtorch.
Another way that I got started was by having my mom and my mother-in-law help me. And when I first got married, I was living in Kentucky, so I would FaceTime them, and they would like help me cook. They would tell me what I had to do. But I think the biggest expectation that you should have is you're gonna screw up, and it's gonna be okay, and that's how you learn. I remember I was making my husband a birthday cake, and I was making the frosting too, and it kept coming out crunchy. I'm like, why is my frosting crunchy? It's not supposed to be this way. I was using sugar, not powdered sugar.
Ooh.
So I did it twice.
But also, that's a great, lesson, a great example, because when you're learning how to cook, and even when you know how to cook, you're going to make mistakes all the time.
Right.
And that's okay.
And it was so sweet because it was like sand, that consistency of sand. And he was like, yeah, it's really good. And thanks for lying, sweetheart, but I know better.
That's what we're here for.
I feel like thanks for lying, sweetheart is like the perfect expression of like the most like married person expression that I can think of.
When we create our clothing line,
It's going to be called
that's gonna
Thanks
be,
for Lying,
no,
Sweetheart.
No, that's going to be one of the shirts, though. You know how there's those popular shirts like All I Need Is Coffee and Jesus?
Mm-hmm.
Like, we'll have Thanks for Lying, Sweetheart, and
Yeah.
other ones like that.
That's amazing.
But
Yeah.
I remember actually, Shawna, I tried to make a homemade roux for the first time ever for macaroni and cheese. And I had my flour and salt right next to each other.
Oh, no.
And I mixed up the servings of
Aw.
each one. And so I did the larger serving of salt and a small serving of
Oh.
that was one bite and it was thrown away. But that happens all the time.
Yeah. And you'll mess up and you'll make mistakes. It's just like in life. You don't give up once you've made a mistake. You can keep going and keep learning and building. And then eventually you'll kind of figure out what you're doing. So yeah, if you make mistakes, keep going. If you mess up in the kitchen and add sugar instead of powdered sugar or salt instead of flour, you're not alone. We've all done that.
So let's talk about grocery shopping. That's probably where you start out a cooking journey.
Mm-hmm. One way that I, as a single guy, shop is just looking around at ingredients that sound really good. And then from that, then I'll say, ooh, there's a sale on chicken. Here's what I could make with chicken, and kind of go through that. Or, oh, this vegetable sounds really good. I could do something with that and I can mix it all together, or who knows what. So kind of find an ingredient that you want to base a meal off of and then go from there. At least that's how I shop. Do you guys do something different? I mean, Shawna, you're cooking for a lot of people, and you know, your kids are probably a little bit more picky than I am with what they eat. So
I have really picky kids. So before we had kids, I did that same thing. I would just go to the store and find what was on sale and be creative. But now that I have a budget that I have to stay within, I have to make a detailed list. I have to stick to it, and I have to think about adult meals and kid meals. So that's the one tough thing about having a picky eater is we've tried the like tough love and you're going to sit here and eat this because that's what we're all eating. But it was just a struggle. And it's not worth the fight. So I make them their own meal. And when they're older, we'll work on it.
Mm-hmm. And it's a process. And like...
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, for us, we sit down on Sunday afternoon and we just ask each other, what are we craving this week? And then we look at potential meals that we know that we're good at making. That's how we build our grocery list is... You know, if we're going to do chicken dishes, then we'll just do a crock pot of plain chicken, shred it up, and then dish it up for different meals, you know, and just plan that way.
And like you were saying, having a couple meals you know you're good at making. Like, I can make a lot of things, but there's really like 5 or 6 main meals that I'll make on a rotation that really sets me up well for the week. So just nail 5 or 6 really good meals that you're okay eating, you know, maybe once every week or two, and kind of set up a rotation. Because once you get those guys down, cooking gets a lot easier and it's a lot less stressful of figuring out what you're going to have to make.
That's a good point. I like that you use the word rotation because we use the same meals all the time too, but I call it a rut. We're in a meal rut.
Yeah, there are still meals that I used to eat as a kid growing up that my wife is saying, I'm craving that. And I tell her I had that way too much as a kid. Like, can we just hold off on that for a little while?
I don't understand that at all because I could eat the same thing. I'm kind of like my dad where we could both eat pizza every day for the rest of our lives or whatever other, like,
really?
If it's a dish I like, I can eat it every day. Like, I can't think of anything that I've eaten so much that I couldn't eat it anymore. I could eat just about anything every day for the rest of my life. So just be like me, and life will be so much easier.
Oh my gosh.
I used to be like that until you get pregnant and food's just, you can't do anything.
So when I get pregnant, then that'll change how food works for me?
That'll change everything.
Cool. So I think that our number one takeaway is get pregnant and cooking will be a lot different. So,
Oh my gosh.
can we say that? I don't know. But yeah, so as we're kind of wrapping up here, guys, what's your kind of final thing that you would encourage people who are, you know, maybe don't cook a lot or have never really cooked? How can they get started with cooking? How can they get more confident in the kitchen?
I think just doing your research, like we said before, Pinterest or YouTube, buying new cookbooks and flipping through them and then marking ones that you think that would be good and trying those like each week.
Mine would be think of your favorite meal that you love to get eating out and then try and make it at home.
Better. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think another really big thing, especially for if you're single and live alone, one thing that would really help is do it with friends. Invite some friends over, have everybody bring some different elements of the meal. I do this all the time where I get some of my other single friends together and we just cook together. That's a huge thing. One, it's a fun social thing to do together. You guys all get to enjoy a meal, kind of cuts down on the cost a lot. And it's just a fun growing opportunity because if they don't know how to cook either, you guys are just having a great time trying to figure out what you're doing in the kitchen.
Then there's that weird guy, though, bringing a crave case or something like that, or a hot and ready.
or get like a meal, meal kits. Those are a huge thing right now. That's a great way to kind of start out learning these skills.
They sell those at the grocery store now, I saw.
Yeah.
Like they sell like pre-made meals with instructions.
There's a million meal kits, so try one of those out too if you'd like. So, yeah. So thank you guys for joining us for Welcome to Adulting. Like we'd said before, check us out on Facebook, on Instagram. Go welcometoadultingpodcast.com. welcometoadultingpod.com. Go to welcometoadultingpod.com and leave us a rating and a review on Apple Podcasts, on Google Podcasts, or wherever you're listening. Thank you to the Family Radio Network so much for producing this show and for allowing us to make this. Go to thefamily.net for more hope, strength, and encouragement. And as we're leaving you today, I just want to encourage you, try something new out in the kitchen. Get out there, get cooking, but also don't forget to cut yourself some slack because you got this. Bye.
Perfecto.
There we go.